Tyler Johnson leaned against the polished mahogany bar, swirling the last drops of bourbon in his glass. The low hum of chatter filled the grand ballroom, a gilded space glittering with opulence. Crystal chandeliers hung like frozen fireworks, casting fractured light over the guests below. Tyler scanned the crowd, his sharp eyes calculating. Each attendee exuded wealth, designer gowns, tailored tuxedos, and the kind of polished smiles reserved for the privileged. It was a gathering of power, a playground of opportunity, and Tyler was there to seize it. As the youngest bartender at the city's most exclusive catering service, Tyler had learned to mask his bitterness with charm. To the guests, he was just another smiling server. To himself, he was a man drowning in debt, trapped by poor decisions and a relentless desire to escape mediocrity. Another old-fashioned, please, a woman's voice cut through his thoughts. Tyler turned, freezing momentarily as he took her in. She was unlike anyone else in the room, not in her appearance, which was elegant yet understated, but in her presence. Nora Williams had a quiet command, her posture poised, her silver hair swept into a soft bun. There was an air of mystery about her, as if she observed the world with both amusement and detachment. Her deep green dress hinted at wealth without shouting it. "Of course, ma'am," Tyler said smoothly, quickly preparing the drink. As he handed it to her, their eyes met, and Nora smiled faintly. "Thank you, young man," she said. "You have steady hands." Tyler chuckled. Steady hands are a bartender's secret weapon. She lingered, taking a slow sip from her glass. "And what's your weapon for getting through a night like this? Surely you'd rather be mingling than pouring drinks." Tyler hesitated, momentarily caught off guard. "Mingling's not really my thing. Besides, I'd rather learn from watching." "Ah, an observer," Nora mused. "That's a rare quality these days." Their conversation was brief, but it planted a seed in Tyler's mind. As the night went on, he overheard snippets of conversations about Nora. She wasn't just another guest, she was the guest. A billionaire widow with no children, she was said to own half the city's prime real estate. More intriguingly, rumors swirled that she had no obvious heirs. By the end of the evening, Tyler had made a decision. His current life, a cramped apartment, relentless creditors, and dreams deferred, wasn't sustainable. But Nora Williams? She could be his way out. Over the next few weeks, Tyler strategically positioned himself in Nora's orbit. He volunteered to work events she was known to attend and, with a mix of calculated charm and genuine attentiveness, began to build a rapport with her. Nora, for her part, seemed to enjoy his company. She would ask him probing questions about his upbringing, his aspirations, his views on the world. Tyler, adept at reading people, gave answers that painted him as ambitious but humble, driven yet grounded. It wasn't long before their interactions moved beyond professional settings. One evening, after an event at the art gallery, Nora invited Tyler for a quiet drink on her penthouse balcony. The view was breathtaking, city lights stretched endlessly, a shimmering tapestry of opportunity. "You have potential, Tyler," Nora said, her tone contemplative. "But potential without direction is like a ship without a compass. You'll drift." Tyler sipped his drink, nodding as if her words carried weight. In truth, he was already envisioning the life he could have as her companion, or perhaps more. The idea of marrying her had taken root, and while it felt absurd at first, it became increasingly plausible. Nora was older, but her health seemed robust. She was sharp, cultured, and, most importantly, extraordinarily wealthy. A few weeks later, Tyler made his move. During a quiet dinner at an upscale restaurant, he confessed his admiration for Nora. He spoke of how she inspired him, of the connection he felt every time they talked. His words were rehearsed, but his delivery was flawless. Nora listened with a serene expression, her head tilted slightly. When Tyler finally fell silent, she regarded him for a long moment before speaking. "Admiration is a lovely sentiment, Tyler," she said, her voice soft but firm. "But love is a different matter." Tyler's heart raced. Had she seen through him? He quickly recovered, leaning forward with a sincerity that felt almost real. I'm not talking about love in the way most people think of it. I'm talking about respect, about a partnership. I see you for who you are, Nora, not just for what you have. For a moment, the air between them felt heavy, charged with unspoken truths. Then Nora smiled, a small, knowing smile that sent a shiver down Tyler's spine. Very well, she said. Let's see where this takes us. The announcement of their engagement sent ripples through their social circles. Nora's closest friends expressed polite skepticism, while others outright dismissed the match as a transparent ploy. Tyler, however, played his role impeccably, deflecting suspicion with charm and humility. The wedding was a modest affair, by Nora's request. Held in the garden of her estate, it was intimate and tasteful, a reflection of her understated elegance. Tyler couldn't help but marvel at his new reality as he stood at her side, exchanging vows. He had done it. He had secured his future. As they settled into married life, Tyler began to explore Nora's assets, hoping to understand the full extent of her wealth. To his frustration, he discovered that much of it was tied up in trusts and philanthropic ventures. Accessing it would require more than just a marriage certificate. One evening, as they sat by the fireplace, Nora handed Tyler an envelope. It was her first letter to him, written in elegant cursive on thick ivory paper. For you, she said simply. Tyler opened it, expecting a sentimental note, perhaps a token of affection. Instead, the letter was reflective, almost philosophical. It spoke of the importance of trust, of seeing beyond surface appearances, and of the value of living with purpose. What is this? Tyler asked, confused. A letter, Nora said with a faint smile. There will be more. Consider it a tradition. As she walked away, Tyler stared at the paper in his hands, a sinking feeling settling in his chest. Something told him that Nora's letters were more than they seemed. Tyler sat at the breakfast table, staring at the letter Nora had given him the night before. The elegant cursive lines were meticulously penned, each word deliberate. While the message appeared harmless, musings on trust, character, and purpose, it left him unsettled. He couldn't shake the feeling that it was meant as a challenge, though he couldn't yet decipher its true purpose. Nora entered the room, moving with the grace of someone entirely at ease. She carried a small tray with coffee and a single white rose, her morning ritual. Tyler quickly tucked the letter into his jacket pocket, forcing a smile as she approached. Good morning, Nora said warmly, setting the tray down. Did you sleep well? Well enough, Tyler replied. He hesitated, then added, thank you for the letter. It was thoughtful. Nora's lips curved into a faint smile, but her eyes sparkled with something deeper, amusement, perhaps, or quiet calculation. I'm glad you read it. Letters have a way of revealing more than spoken words ever could. Tyler nodded, though her response left him no closer to understanding her intentions. He decided to dismiss it for now. He had bigger concerns, gaining access to her wealth. Their married life settled into a rhythm. To the outside world, Tyler and Nora seemed like an unconventional but surprisingly harmonious couple. They attended galas, dined at exclusive restaurants, and appeared side by side at charitable events. Tyler played his role perfectly, attentive and charming, always by Nora's side. He quickly became a fixture in her world, garnering admiration from acquaintances and begrudging acceptance from her inner circle. Privately, however, Tyler was growing frustrated. Each attempt to gain insight into Nora's finances was met with roadblocks. Her wealth was protected by layers of legal safeguards, managed by advisors who clearly did not trust him. Nora herself never mentioned money, focusing instead on their shared activities and conversations. One evening, Tyler finally broached the topic during dinner. They were seated in the dining room of Nora's sprawling estate, candlelight casting flickering shadows on the walls. Nora, he began carefully, have you ever thought about simplifying things? Your estate, I mean. All these trusts and accounts, don't they make things unnecessarily complicated? Nora set down her fork and looked at him, her expression unreadable. Complicated, perhaps. but necessary. Wealth, Tyler, is like fire. It can provide warmth, or it can destroy. The trick is controlling it. Tyler forced a laugh. Fair enough. But wouldn't it be easier if things were a bit more centralized? You know, for the sake of transparency. Transparency? Nora raised an eyebrow, her voice tinged with amusement. Or convenience. Tyler froze, realizing he had overstepped. But before he could respond, Nora's expression softened. Tyler, she said gently, if there's one thing I've learned about wealth, it's that it reveals people. Their character, their intentions, their values. Money doesn't corrupt, it merely amplifies what's already there. Her words felt pointed, and Tyler's discomfort grew. He quickly changed the subject, steering the conversation toward a neutral topic. But the unease lingered long after the meal was over. A few days later, Nora handed Tyler a second letter. This one was shorter than the first but no less cryptic. It spoke of patience, humility, and the importance of perspective. Tyler read it twice, searching for hidden meaning, but came away more confused than ever. When he confronted Nora about it, she simply smiled. Sometimes, the act of pondering is more valuable than the answer itself. Despite his growing frustration, Tyler knew he couldn't press too hard. He needed to maintain her trust if he was ever going to access her fortune. And so, he buried his doubts and continued to play the part of the devoted husband. Their relationship took an unexpected turn one evening when Nora invited Tyler to join her for a private dinner at an old family property. The estate, nestled in the countryside, was far removed from the grandeur of her city home. The house was modest but elegant, surrounded by sprawling gardens that seemed untouched by time. As they walked through the grounds, Nora shared stories of her past, memories of her late husband, her struggles to build her empire, and the lessons she had learned along the way. Tyler listened intently, surprised by the depth of her vulnerability. For the first time, he glimpsed a side of Nora that was raw and human, free of the mystique she carried so effortlessly. When they returned to the house, Nora poured them each a glass of wine and handed Tyler yet another envelope. He sighed inwardly but accepted it without complaint. Tyler, she said, her voice serious, this one's important. He nodded, slipping the envelope into his pocket. They spent the rest of the evening in companionable silence, the air between them unexpectedly warm. Back at the city estate, Tyler opened the letter. This one was different from the others, it was more direct, almost instructional. Nora asked him to complete a specific task, visit a local shelter and spend the day volunteering. She described the shelter in vivid detail, painting a picture of the people who lived there and the struggles they faced. At first, Tyler balked at the idea. He wasn't interested in playing along with her whims, especially if it meant sacrificing his time for strangers. But as he reread the letter, he realized he had little choice. Refusing would raise questions, and Tyler couldn't afford to jeopardize his position. The next day, he visited the shelter. It was a humbling experience. The residents were a mix of ages and backgrounds, each with their own story of hardship and resilience. Tyler initially kept his distance, going through the motions without much enthusiasm. But as the hours passed, something shifted. He found himself drawn to their stories, their laughter, their unwavering hope despite their circumstances. By the time he left, Tyler felt a strange sense of fulfillment, an unfamiliar but not entirely unwelcome emotion. When he returned home that evening, Nora was waiting for him in the library. She looked up from her book as he entered, her expression unreadable. "How is it?" she asked simply. "It was eye-opening," Tyler admitted, though he struggled to articulate why. Nora nodded, as if she already knew. "Good. You'll find that the world has much to teach us, if we're willing to listen." Tyler didn't respond. Instead, he sank into a chair, feeling uncharacteristically introspective. He couldn't shake the feeling that Nora was orchestrating something far bigger than he realized. But what? As the weeks passed, Tyler continued to receive letters from Nora. Each one contained a new challenge, a new lesson. Some tasks were small, helping a neighbor, donating to a cause, while others required more effort. Though he often resented them, Tyler found himself strangely drawn to the process. The letters forced him to engage with the world in ways he never had before, and despite himself, he began to change. But his ultimate goal remained the same: securing Nora's fortune. And as far as he could tell, she wasn't making it easy. The envelope was waiting for Tyler at breakfast. Sealed with a wax stamp bearing an intricate floral design, it sat beside his plate as though daring him to open it. Nora, sipping her tea across the table, seemed entirely uninterested in his reaction. It was a contrast to her usual enigmatic demeanor, which only made Tyler more suspicious. He opened the letter slowly, careful not to let his frustration show. The content was brief but specific. Nora wanted him to spend the following Saturday volunteering at a community shelter. Tyler glanced up from the letter, his expression carefully neutral. "A shelter?" he asked. "Yes," Nora replied simply, not even looking up from her newspaper. "It's a remarkable place. I think you'll learn a great deal from it." Tyler's instinct was to refuse. Spending an entire day at a shelter felt like a waste of time, a distraction from his ultimate goal. But refusing would raise questions, and the last thing he wanted was for Nora to sense his reluctance. "Sure," he said, forcing a smile. "It sounds interesting." Nora folded her newspaper neatly, setting it aside. "Good. You'll find the experience rewarding, I'm sure." Her tone was calm, almost disinterested, but Tyler couldn't shake the feeling that she was testing him. Saturday morning arrived too soon for Tyler's liking. The shelter was a modest building on the edge of the city, its weathered exterior a stark contrast to the sleek, opulent spaces Tyler usually frequented. As he stepped inside, the smell of warm food and the sound of quiet chatter greeted him. A woman approached him, her name tag identifying her as Linda, the shelter's coordinator. Her smile was genuine, but her eyes carried the weight of someone who had seen far too much hardship. "You must be Tyler," she said, extending a hand. "Nora told me you'd be coming. We're so grateful for your help today." "Of course," Tyler replied, shaking her hand. "Happy to be here." Linda led him through the shelter, explaining its purpose. It provided meals, temporary housing, and resources to help residents get back on their feet. As she spoke, Tyler found himself zoning out, nodding politely but only half listening. He was already calculating how to get through the day with minimal effort. His first task was serving lunch to the shelter's residents. It was simple enough, scooping portions of stew onto plates and handing them out with a forced smile. But as the line of residents passed, Tyler began to notice details that unsettled him. The way some avoided eye contact, the quiet gratitude in their murmured thank yous, the children clutching their parents' hands as they waited for their turn. For the first time, Tyler found himself wondering about their stories. Who were these people? How had they ended up here? And why did he feel so uncomfortable in their presence? By mid-afternoon, Tyler had settled into a rhythm. He spent time cleaning tables, restocking supplies, and even chatting with a few of the residents. One man, a former construction worker named Greg, shared how he had lost his job and his home after a series of medical emergencies. Despite everything, Greg spoke with an optimism that Tyler found baffling. "You just keep going," Greg said, his voice steady. "Some days are harder than others, but you can't give up. There's always something worth fighting for." Tyler nodded, unsure of what to say. He felt an unfamiliar pang of guilt, a gnawing sensation he couldn't quite explain. By the time the day ended, Tyler was exhausted in a way he hadn't anticipated. His body ached from the physical labor, but it was the emotional weight of the experience that lingered. As he left the shelter, he couldn't shake the feeling that something inside him had shifted. When he returned home, Nora was waiting for him in the library. She looked up from her book as he entered, her expression serene. "How was it?" she asked. "It was different," Tyler admitted, unsure how to articulate his thoughts. "I mean, I didn't expect to feel so." He stopped, searching for the right word. "Moved?" Nora offered, her tone gentle. "Yeah," Tyler said, surprised by how true it felt. Moved. Nora smiled faintly, as though she had expected this all along. Good. The world has much to teach us, Tyler, if we're willing to listen. He didn't respond. Instead, he sank into a chair, his mind still reeling from the day's events. Nora's words hung in the air, a quiet echo of the lessons he hadn't realized he was learning. Over the following weeks, the letters continued to arrive. Each one contained a new challenge, a new task designed to push Tyler out of his comfort zone. Nora's instructions were always specific, yet their purpose remained elusive. One letter asked him to spend a day volunteering at a community garden, helping to plant vegetables that would later be donated to local food banks. Another directed him to mentor a group of high school students struggling with college applications. Each task forced Tyler to engage with people he would have otherwise ignored, to confront realities he had spent his life avoiding. At first, he resented the letters, viewing them as obstacles to his ultimate goal. But gradually, something began to change. The more time he spent fulfilling Nora's requests, the more he found himself questioning his own motivations. One particularly poignant moment came during a visit to a retirement home. Nora's letter had instructed him to spend an afternoon with an elderly resident named Evelyn. When Tyler arrived, Evelyn greeted him with a wide smile, her eyes bright with curiosity. "You remind me of my grandson," she said, patting his hand. "So full of life." Over the course of the afternoon, Evelyn shared stories of her youth, her marriage, and the challenges she had faced. Her words were laced with wisdom and humor, and by the time Tyler left, he felt an unexpected sense of connection. For the first time in years, Tyler began to feel a spark of something he couldn't quite name, something that felt dangerously close to purpose. One evening, after completing yet another of Nora's tasks, Tyler found himself sitting alone in the library, staring at the stack of letters she had given him. Each one represented a moment of growth, a lesson learned. And yet, he couldn't shake the feeling that Nora was orchestrating something far bigger than he realized. He thought back to their conversations, her subtle hints, her knowing smiles. Was this her way of testing him? Preparing him? Or was it simply her way of teaching him to see the world through a different lens? Tyler didn't have the answers. But for the first time in his life, he found himself wanting to understand. The envelope was waiting for Tyler on the mantelpiece, tucked between two brass candlesticks that reflected the morning light. By now, he was accustomed to finding Nora's letters in unexpected places. This time, the letter was heavier, its seal larger and more ornate. When he opened it, his brows furrowed. Nora had written, "It's time to lead. People are waiting for direction, and you must provide it. Find your voice, Tyler." Beneath the note was a detailed instruction. Tyler was to organize and lead a fundraising event for a local youth organization. The event, Nora explained, was intended to provide scholarships for underprivileged teens pursuing higher education. Tyler sat down heavily, the letter still in his hand. This task wasn't like the others. It wasn't about showing up and participating, it required effort, planning, and visibility. Invisibility, Tyler realized, meant scrutiny. For days, Tyler worked to prepare for the fundraiser. He contacted the youth organization, coordinated with vendors, and reached out to some of Nora's acquaintances for support. Each step felt like climbing a mountain. Networking wasn't new to him, but this wasn't his usual crowd. These weren't people he could charm with surface-level flattery. They wanted to see genuine dedication. One afternoon, Tyler called Linda, the shelter coordinator he had worked with weeks earlier. To his surprise, she remembered him fondly and even offered advice on how to make the event more impactful. "People respond to stories," Linda said. "If you want them to donate, show them what their money can do. Make it personal." Tyler mulled over her words long after their conversation ended. He had spent most of his life avoiding personal connections, yet now he was being asked to forge them. It was ironic, really, a man who had manipulated relationships for gain now struggling to build them authentically. The day of the fundraiser arrived faster than Tyler anticipated. The venue, a sleek downtown gallery, was filled with tables adorned with minimalist centerpieces. Photographs of the students who would benefit from the scholarships were displayed on easels throughout the space, their smiles radiant and hopeful. Tyler stood near the entrance, greeting guests as they arrived. Nora wasn't there. She had insisted on staying home, citing her preference for quiet evenings. Despite her absence, Tyler felt her presence in every detail of the event. He knew she would hear about it soon enough, and the thought made his chest tighten. As the evening progressed, Tyler found himself on stage, a microphone in hand. The room fell silent as he began to speak. "I'm not an expert in fundraising," he admitted, his voice steady despite the nervous energy coursing through him. "But I am learning the power of opportunities. Opportunities to grow, to learn, to become more than we thought possible." He gestured to the photographs behind him. "These students have dreams that can change their lives and their communities. Tonight, we have the chance to make those dreams a reality." Applause broke out as Tyler stepped off the stage, a flood of relief washing over him. For the first time in months, he felt a glimmer of pride, not because he had performed well, but because the cause felt meaningful. After the event, Tyler returned home to find Nora waiting in the sitting room, a cup of tea balanced delicately in her hands. She looked up as he entered, her expression soft but expectant. "Well?" she asked. "It went surprisingly well," Tyler said, sinking into a chair across from her. "We raised more than I thought we would." Nora smiled. "I had no doubt you'd succeed." Tyler hesitated, then added, "It felt good. Seeing those kids, hearing their stories. It made me realize how much of a difference we can make." For a moment, Nora simply studied him, her gaze piercing yet warm. "You're beginning to understand," she said softly. "Understand what?" "That the world doesn't revolve around what we take, but what we give." Her words stayed with Tyler long after their conversation ended. That night, as he lay in bed, he found himself replaying the events of the day in his mind. The faces of the students, the generosity of the donors, the sense of purpose he had felt, it was all so foreign, yet oddly comforting. The next letter arrived a week later, and it contained a challenge that pushed Tyler even further out of his comfort zone. Nora wanted him to mentor a young man named Jason, a recent high school graduate who was struggling to find direction. At first, Tyler balked at the idea. He didn't see himself as a mentor. What could he possibly teach someone else? But as he read through Nora's letter, he realized this wasn't about expertise. It was about guidance, about being present for someone who needed support. When Tyler met Jason, he was struck by how much the young man reminded him of his younger self. Jason was sharp but unfocused, full of potential but weighed down by insecurity and a lack of resources. Over the next several weeks, Tyler spent hours with Jason, helping him navigate college applications, prepare for interviews, and explore career paths. It wasn't always easy. Jason's skepticism often mirrored Tyler's own reluctance, and there were moments of tension and doubt. But gradually, a bond formed between them, one built on trust, patience, and mutual respect. One afternoon, as they wrapped up a session at a local cafe, Jason looked at Tyler with an expression of quiet gratitude. "I don't think I could have done this without you," Jason said. "You've really helped me believe in myself." The words hit Tyler like a tidal wave. For so long, he had been chasing validation through wealth and status, but here was a young man who valued him for something far deeper. It was humbling in a way Tyler hadn't expected. As the weeks turned into months, Tyler's life became increasingly entwined with the tasks Nora set for him. He found himself drawn to the people he met, the causes he supported, and the lessons he learned along the way. He still didn't fully understand Nora's motives, but he no longer questioned them. Instead, he began to trust the process, even as it forced him to confront parts of himself he had long ignored. One evening, after finishing yet another mentoring session with Jason, Tyler returned home to find Nora waiting for him in the library. She was seated in her favorite armchair, her posture relaxed but her expression serious. "You've come a long way, Tyler," she said as he entered. "But there's still more to do." Tyler sank into the chair opposite hers, a wry smile on his face. "I figured as much. What's next?" Nora didn't answer immediately. Instead, she reached for a small box on the side table and handed it to him. Inside was a stack of letters, each sealed with her familiar wax stamp. "These are for you," she said. "But you're not to open them all at once. One at a time, when the moment feels right." Tyler stared at the box, his heart pounding. "What's in them?" "Lessons," Nora replied simply. "Challenges, reflections, the things you'll need to carry forward." Her words felt heavy with meaning, but Tyler didn't press for more. He had learned that Nora's wisdom often revealed itself in time. As he climbed into bed that night, the box of letters resting on the bedside table, Tyler felt a mix of anticipation and apprehension. He didn't know where this journey would lead, but for the first time, he wasn't afraid to find out. The day began like any other. The house was quiet, the morning sunlight filtering through the tall windows in golden streams. Tyler was at the breakfast table, nursing a cup of coffee and absent-mindedly turning the pages of a newspaper, when the phone rang. It was Helen, one of Nora's oldest friends. Her voice, usually warm and composed, cracked as she delivered the news. Nora had passed away in her sleep the previous night. The phone slipped from Tyler's hand. For a moment, the world seemed to tilt, the silence in the room suddenly deafening. He sat motionless, his mind racing. Despite everything, despite the complexity of their relationship, Nora's absence hit him harder than he expected. She had been the cornerstone of his life for the past year, the one constant as he navigated the uncharted waters of her challenges and lessons. And now, she was gone. The funeral was held 3 days later in the garden of Nora's estate, a quiet and intimate affair attended by close friends and a few select acquaintances. Tyler stood at the edge of the gathering, his hands clasped tightly in front of him. He was painfully aware of the sideways glances, the murmurs of suspicion among the attendees. To many, he was still an enigma, a young, opportunistic man who had inexplicably wormed his way into Nora's life. But Tyler paid them no mind. His focus was on the woman they were there to honor. As the eulogies were delivered, he found himself reflecting on everything she had taught him, the letters, the tasks, the moments of quiet wisdom she had shared. They had been more than mere exercises, they had been her way of reshaping him, of helping him see the world through new eyes. Later that afternoon, after the guests had left, Tyler wandered the grounds of the estate. The garden was alive with color, a symphony of blossoms swaying gently in the breeze. He paused near a bench, his thoughts heavy, when one of Nora's attorneys approached him. "Mr. Johnson," the attorney began, his tone formal but not unkind. "Mrs. Williams left something for you. It was to be given only after her passing." The attorney handed Tyler a small envelope, its wax seal bearing the now familiar floral design. Tyler's fingers trembled as he broke the seal and unfolded the letter inside. Nora's handwriting, so elegant and deliberate, seemed almost alive on the page. "My dearest Tyler. If you are reading this, it means my time here has come to an end. Do not grieve for me, my life was full, and my heart was at peace when I left. Instead, I ask that you honor the legacy we have built together, not with wealth, but with purpose. You must know by now that I was always aware of your intentions when we first met. Your charm, your ambition, your hunger for something more, I saw it all, Tyler. But I also saw something else, potential. Beneath the layers of opportunism and cynicism, I saw a man capable of greatness, of kindness, of transformation. That is why I chose you. Now, I leave you with one final challenge. My estate, my wealth, my name, they are not gifts to be inherited. They are responsibilities to be earned. Enclosed, you will find a list of actions you must complete before the full extent of my resources will be made available to you. These tasks are not tests, they are opportunities, opportunities to build, to create, and to give. I believe in you, Tyler. More than you may believe in yourself. And I trust that, in time, you will come to understand the depth of what I am entrusting to you. With love, and with hope. Nora. Tucked inside the envelope was another folded sheet of paper. It contained a detailed list of tasks, each one more daunting than the last. Tyler scanned the list, his chest tightening. Some tasks were logistical, establishing charitable foundations, overseeing philanthropic initiatives. Others were deeply personal, requiring him to mentor others, invest in community projects, and continue the work Nora had begun. For a long time, Tyler simply sat on the bench, the letter trembling in his hands. Part of him wanted to walk away, to leave the estate and never look back. After all, hadn't he done enough? He had played the role Nora had crafted for him, fulfilled her tasks, and endured her endless challenges. But as the minutes stretched into hours, another thought began to take root. This wasn't about the money anymore. It hadn't been for a long time. Nora had seen something in him, something he hadn't even seen in himself. To abandon her legacy now would be to betray not only her faith in him but also the person he had slowly become. With a deep breath, Tyler stood and folded the letter carefully, tucking it into his jacket. There was work to be done. The weeks that followed were some of the most challenging of Tyler's life. Nora's list was exhaustive, requiring him to step into roles he had never imagined for himself. He worked tirelessly to establish a scholarship fund for underprivileged students, using the skills he had honed during the fundraiser. He collaborated with community leaders to create job training programs and launched a mentorship initiative for at-risk youth. At every turn, Tyler was reminded of Nora's lessons. He approached each challenge with patience, humility, and a willingness to listen, qualities he had once dismissed but now valued deeply. And as he poured himself into the work, something remarkable began to happen. He started to feel a sense of fulfillment he had never known before. One evening, after a particularly long day, Tyler returned to the estate and found himself drawn to the library. It was a room he had always associated with Nora, her favorite armchair, her shelves of carefully curated books, the faint scent of lavender that lingered in the air. As he settled into her chair, he noticed a small box on the side table. It was the box of letters Nora had given him months earlier, the ones she had instructed him to open only at the right moment. Tyler hesitated before reaching for the first envelope. When he opened it, he found a single sentence written in her elegant script. "The seeds you plant today will become the garden you leave behind." The words brought tears to his eyes. For the first time, Tyler truly understood the depth of Nora's wisdom. She hadn't just been teaching him about charity or responsibility, she had been teaching him about legacy, about the impact one life could have on countless others. Months turned into years, and Tyler's work continued to grow. Under his guidance, Nora's estate became a hub of philanthropy, its resources channeled into causes that uplifted communities and transformed lives. Tyler himself became a mentor to others, sharing the lessons he had learned from Nora with a new generation of leaders. And though Nora was gone, her presence remained, an invisible thread woven through every choice he made, every life he touched. On the anniversary of her passing, Tyler returned to the garden where her funeral had been held. He sat on the bench where he had first read her final letter, the box of unopened letters by his side. As he opened another envelope, he felt a quiet sense of peace. Nora had believed in him, even when he hadn't believed in himself. And in the end, she had been right. The seed she had planted in him had blossomed into something extraordinary, a legacy not of wealth, but of purpose. The garden had become Tyler's sanctuary. It was a space Nora had loved, a place she had cultivated with the same care and intention she had poured into the people around her. Now, it stood as a living symbol of her legacy, a vibrant testament to growth, renewal, and purpose. As Tyler strolled through the rows of blooming flowers, he marveled at how much had changed since he first arrived at Nora's estate. He had come seeking wealth, blinded by ambition and desperation. But now, the man he had become was almost unrecognizable, shaped by the lessons she had imparted and the work she had inspired him to do. He paused near a newly planted section of the garden, where a group of young volunteers worked side by side. They were students from the scholarship fund he had established in Nora's name. Watching them laugh and collaborate filled Tyler with a quiet pride. These students, many of whom had once faced immense obstacles, were now building futures brimming with potential. "Mr. Johnson," a voice called out, breaking his reverie. He turned to see Jason, the young man he had mentored years ago, approaching with a clipboard in hand. Jason, Tyler greeted with a smile. "How's everything going?" "Good," Jason replied, returning the smile. "The community center is officially ready for its grand opening next week. I just wanted to confirm that you'll be there for the ribbon cutting." "Wouldn't miss it," Tyler said, clapping him on the shoulder. "You've done incredible work. I'm proud of you." Jason flushed slightly, looking both pleased and humbled. "Couldn't have done it without you." As Jason walked away, Tyler felt a surge of gratitude. The work they were doing together wasn't just changing lives, it was creating a ripple effect, inspiring others to continue the cycle of giving and growth. It was a legacy Nora would have been proud of. Later that evening, Tyler sat in the library, surrounded by the warmth of Nora's cherished books. On the desk in front of him was the final unopened letter from the box she had given him. It had remained untouched for months, its presence both comforting and intimidating. Tonight, he felt ready. He broke the seal and unfolded the paper, his heart pounding as he read her words. "Dear Tyler, by now, I trust you've come to understand the essence of what I hope to teach you. Life is not measured by what we acquire, but by what we give. True wealth lies in the connections we forge, the lives we uplift, and the impact we leave behind. You have exceeded my expectations, Tyler. You've taken what could have been mere lessons and transformed them into something far greater. The work you've done, the lives you've touched, they are the seeds of a new legacy, one that will continue to grow long after we are gone. But there's one final task I leave to you. It is perhaps the simplest, but also the most profound. Keep going. When the work feels overwhelming, when doubt creeps in, when you wonder if it's enough, keep going. Trust that every step, no matter how small, contributes to something meaningful. Remember, you were never chosen for your potential alone. You were chosen for your capacity to evolve, to rise above your own doubts and limitations. And you have. I couldn't be prouder of the man you've become. With all my love. Nora." Tyler set the letter down, his vision blurred with tears. He sat there for a long time, letting the weight of her words wash over him. She had seen something in him that he hadn't seen in himself, an ability not only to change but to inspire change in others. And now, her faith in him felt like a responsibility he was honored to carry. The years passed, and Tyler's work continued to expand. The foundation he had established in Nora's name became a pillar of the community, funding education, housing, and healthcare initiatives. Tyler took an active role in every project, ensuring that each effort aligned with the values Nora had instilled in him. His own life evolved in unexpected ways. He married Anna, a dedicated social worker he had met through one of the foundation's programs. Together, they built a family rooted in compassion and purpose, raising their children to understand the importance of giving back. Tyler's relationship with Jason deepened over the years. The young man had gone on to become a leader in the foundation, spearheading initiatives that brought opportunities to underserved communities. Watching Jason thrive filled Tyler with a profound sense of fulfillment, a reminder of how far they had both come. On the 10th anniversary of Nora's passing, Tyler hosted a celebration in her honor. The event was held in the garden she had loved so much, now expanded and flourishing under his care. It was a joyous occasion, attended by hundreds of people whose lives had been touched by Nora's vision and Tyler's dedication. As he stood before the crowd to deliver his speech, Tyler felt a wave of emotion. He glanced down at the notes he had prepared but decided to set them aside. Instead, he spoke from the heart. "When I first met Nora," he began, his voice steady, "I didn't understand the depth of her wisdom or the strength of her character. I saw only what I thought I could gain. But Nora saw something different. She saw who I could become." He paused, looking out at the faces in the crowd. "Everything you see here, every project, every success, every life transformed, is a testament to her faith in the power of people to grow, to change, to give. It's a legacy that belongs not just to her, but to all of us." The applause that followed was thunderous, but Tyler hardly heard it. His thoughts were with Nora, her quiet smile, and the countless ways she had shaped his life. That night, as the celebration wound down, Tyler returned to the bench in the garden where he had read Nora's final letter. The stars above were brilliant, a tapestry of light stretching endlessly into the night. He closed his eyes, letting the cool breeze wash over him. In that moment, he felt Nora's presence, strong, steady, and unyielding. She had given him a gift far greater than wealth, the chance to create a legacy of his own. And he would keep going.